Sills, National Football Show. Welcome aboard. Appreciate everybody coming aboard each and every single day, Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 Eastern time. We so appreciate you. And you know what's great about the NFL? You know what's great about the NFL? It's front page every day. The National Football League is front page every day. Oh, and this just in. If you're Jalen Hurts, I was just telling Tone this. If you're Jalen Hurts, without even opening your mouth, with saying all the right things, you probably made yourself yesterday $10 million. And you probably put yourself in the $45 million range for your annual salary because of the guy in New York. I would agree with this. Daniel Jones, that's a market value quarterback. That's a market value guy. And if you're going to give that dude $35 million, what's Jalen Hurts worth? 50? Hurts didn't have to say a word. Clutch Sports didn't have to do one bit of negotiating. He sat back, answered all the questions. Hey, that time will come. Doing all the right things, public appearances, face of the franchise, no adversarial relationship. Jalen Hurts is making money in his silence. Think of that for a minute. He doesn't even have to open his mouth, and the market is now going like this in front of Jalen Hurts without even opening his mouth. Daniel Jones? I will say this to you. If I'm the New York Giants and somebody told me that I got to pay Daniel Jones $35 million, why wouldn't I just cut off the negotiations and go get Derek Carr? I feel better giving Derek Carr $35 million before I give Daniel Jones, Mr. Truly one-year wonder. Okay, I mean, why in the world would you do anything or say anything or even come to the table? I'm not saying that the Eagles and Jalen Hurts' folks haven't already broached those conversations, because I believe they have. But look at what the market has done in the last 2 days. This is 1 week removed from the Super Bowl. And you already have a quarterback in the open market commanding, or asking, I should say, for $45 million. And he's far not worth that. Daniel Jones, I would never come. Dude, I got a problem with the franchise tag of 32.7. I got a problem giving that guy $32 million. I'd rather give Derek Carr or Garoppolo that money. At least they've won and they've put up numbers. I mean, he didn't turn the ball over. Those weren't exceptional numbers he put up this year. They were okay. Some will go, well, Sills, that. Well, if that's market value, let me go find a better talent. Daniel Jones is not a better talent than Derek Carr. And if I'm going to pay $35 million, let alone 40, I'm going to go get Carr, man. At least I know he's good. At least I know this guy's going to put up some really great numbers. Can you imagine Derek Carr and DeAndre Hopkins in New York? With Saquon Barkley? I'm good with that. Watch this. $35 million, Derek Carr. Here's 10 for Saquon. I go get, they got a bunch of, Cone told me they got about $40 million in cap space. So you go get DeAndre Hopkins too? Giants are good. Giants are good. Derek Carr's got a hell of a market. Bucks, Carolina, New Orleans, the Jets. Shit, there'll be other teams. Hey, if you're the Cowboys, how about this? Think about this if you're the Cowboys. Is Derek Carr an upgrade to Dak Prescott? I think so. If I'm going to pay 42, why wouldn't I just trade him somewhere to like Green Bay? Then you can get rid of Rodgers. Why wouldn't you do that? Plus, the Cowboys would have a quarterback that's less dough. Come on, man. Let's make this happen. Okay? Let's make this happen. Get to the table. Hey, Jalen Hurts is sitting there making money right now, not even opening his mouth. What a great play by Jalen. By the way, today is franchise tag day. We'll talk about that with your favorite team and also the Eagles. Again, folks, I want to make this very clear. I was just telling Tone this. My problem with paying Jalen Hurts is not the money on the base. It's the length. I'm not giving that guy lengthy contracts. I'm just not. Dual threat doesn't last. Even Tony Dungy said that. By the way, we got Seth Joyner at the bottom of the hour. And we're going to talk to Seth and get his spin on everything. I know Seth disagrees with me too. So be prepared for that. Seth is at the bottom of this hour. Also, little programming note. Tomorrow, the head football coach of the Carolina Panthers. At 4 p.m. Eastern time, Frank Reich will join us. And we'll talk to the head coach, get his thoughts on Jalen Hurts. Carolina, I'm also going to ask Frank if he and Nick Sirianni were kind of ping-ponging things going back and forth on Andy Reid. So I'm gonna ask Frank that tomorrow. That'll be at 4 p.m. Okay. You know, I keep hearing names when it comes to the defensive coordinators. And first off, let me ask you this. Let me get to the topic here. Before we get to Seth Joyner at the bottom of the hour, what kind of defensive coordinator do you think Jonathan Gannon was? I'm going to read some names here to you. I'm going to ask Seth Joyner this question. You know, his defense finished second in the NFL. Here are some of the greatest defensive coordinators in the Super Bowl era for the Eagles. Jimmy Johnson, 1999 to 2008, won 97 ball games as defensive coordinator. Jim Schwartz, 2016 to 20, won 42 games and a Super Bowl. Jeff Fisher, 89 to 90, 21 and 11. Sean McDermott, 2009 to 2010, 21 and 11. Jonathan Gannon, 23 and 11, won an NFC championship. Where does Gannon fit in there? Sean McDermott, Jeff Fisher, Jim Schwartz, who's now the current DC in Cleveland, or Jim Johnson. And of course, the overseer of those great gangrene teams was Buddy Ryan. Where do you put Jonathan Gannon? And by the way, do me a favor. You know the great sack total that the team had this year? That had nothing to do with Jonathan Gannon. That had everything to do with guys pinning their ears and getting it done. He did nothing. I don't see a safety with big sack numbers or a linebacker. Or guys blitzing to get sacks. There wasn't any schematical thing that made those 70 sacks stand out where, hey, man, you see that guy bring that exotic blitz? There was none of that. Where's Gannon? Does Gannon deserve to be considered one of the greatest defensive coordinators in the history of the Eagles? In his 2 years, is he better than Jeff Fisher? I don't think so. How about Sean McDermott? McDermott is an aggressive guy. Jim Schwartz? Jim had his quirks about his defense. Jim Johnson? I don't mean to insult you guys. Okay? I don't mean to insult you. Where does Gannon fit in this list? See, here's the problem that Eagle fans have. Look at the names that I mentioned to you. Johnson, Schwartz, Fisher, McDermott, all aggressive dudes. Brian Dawkins said he couldn't play for Jonathan Gannon. I probably think more Brian Dawkins when he said that on IP meant that he couldn't play in that style. I'm going to ask Seth Joyner that question. I bet you Seth can't play in that style either. Can you imagine Jonathan Gannon being the defensive coordinator of Reggie White, Seth Joyner, Andre Waters, Wes Hopkins, Jerome Brown, Clyde Simmons? Can you imagine? You had all those pieces. And I don't know. And someone will look around and go, Danny was second. Yeah, against inferior opponents. I always thought those numbers were shallow numbers and hollow numbers. Bud Carson, too, man. You're right. UST, Bud Carson was also a heck of a coordinator when it came, but Buddy oversaw a lot of that stuff. The question will be, what kind of defense does Howie want? You know, I saw on the front page of the Inquirer, what kind of coordinators does Nick Sirianni want? You're asking the wrong question. What kind of coordinator does Howie Roseman want? Howie's the one building the team. I think you get your coordinator in the building, then you determine who's coming back. Then you determine who's out there in the open market that can help that guy scheme. They're not going to have a lot of money unless they go young. The only way you're going to get a top flight guy in here that's a free agent is if you whack that entire defense. Draft rookies and pick and choose. You better be right. You better be Bradbury right. You better be Hassan Reddick right. You better be right like that if you're going to have the same results as you did a year ago. By the way, I want to make sure that I keep telling people this. And again, people over on my Twitter page, once again, and Tone, you guys are doing a great job on the clips. You're doing a great job on the clips. But once again, I asked the question to you. Is Jalen Hurts going to be able to lead a team to a Super Bowl win with a lesser team? Some would go like this. He had a lesser team. That's not true. Patrick Mahomes had the lesser team. Not Jalen Hurts. There's no $20 million wide receiver in Kansas City. There's no 1,300-yard back in Kansas City. There's not a $75 million offensive line in Kansas City. Your two tackles alone are $18 million, offensive tackles. Shit, your defensive tackles are $14 million apiece. Lesser talent. Are you crazy? Guys are saying yes. How do you know that? He couldn't before in his first year. And people go, well, wait a minute. That was his first. Well, Joe Burrow's first year starting. Got hurt halfway through. And then his first full year starting, he took a team to the Super Bowl. Cincinnati. That's my concern. The more you pay him, the lesser of a team you're going to have. People keep going, well, Howie's going to work. Howie can't. Dude, you guys have to understand one thing. Howie can't work magic when a guy wants to get paid. There's no magic to work. There's no magic to work. There's $224 million. That's a salary cap. That's it. Well, we can restart. Yeah, okay. You can't. That notion that Hurts is the second best quarterback in the league with 1 year under his belt of good play, great play, is obnoxious. How do you know that? You were so sold on Wentz. After 17, you gave him a boatload of money. You were 100% sold. Hence the contract extension. Oh, this is different. Really? The situations are the same. The only thing different is that Wentz, get this, Wentz even got hurt and got a contract extension. That's, again, I'm talking, you know what's funny? People get on me for this, and I'm about building the Eagle roster up again and making it look like the 49er roster. And you guys are fighting me on it because you want to pay one guy. I don't give a shit about one guy. I care about putting a Super Bowl roster together. Why shouldn't you? This is not about one guy. This is not tennis or golf. This is about 53 dudes and coaches all rowing in the same direction. It's not about paying one guy. Ask the Cowboys that. Ask the Raiders that. Ask the Vikings that. Ask any team that's paid their guy. Ask Seattle that. It's a team sport. And the more you pay and put focus on one dude, that's why Brady did something that was against the NFL Players Association, Will, and really against the guy behind him coming in. He always took less dough. You know why? Because Brady invested in himself. Do you know why Brady's got that resume? Brady's got that resume because he looked at the roster first before himself. That's how he won. They were able to always have a balanced salary cap and a balanced team. Look at what the Eagles are going to have. If you come back with all those free agents, how many people do you think out of the 9 starters are going to come back that are free agents? 4 tops. 4. 4 tops. The rest of them, all your money is going to be on the offensive side. That's an unbalanced roster. You think you're going to be the second-ranked defense in the NFL with a completely different facelift? Absolutely not. You'll be lucky to be 15th. Will that be good enough to get a team to a Super Bowl? I don't think so, because that means this. There won't be a lot of 3-and-outs like there were a year ago. Blunt goes, would you trade? I'm not trading Hurts. That's not, again, you're missing this, guys. Maybe it's me and it's not landing right. I'm trying to figure out a way to keep Jalen and the team intact as much as I can. Why aren't you? Why aren't you thinking that way? Why do some people have to bring in outside conversation that has nothing to do with football? Well, you just don't want to play a black. What's that got to do with building a roster? What does that have to do with winning? Race, gender, all of that other nonsense that people talk about has nothing to do with winning. 0. It's fodder for all the idiots in the world. This is about winning. Again, it's not paying Jalen. And by the way, I don't care what you pay him. I care about keeping that roster close to the Niners. You're not close to the Niners right now. You got 9 guys that are starters, that are free agents, that had career years. You're not bringing people back unless you designate them in franchise tags. Restricted, all that shit. You may have to bring out the franchise tag book and put on some of these guys, because you're not going to be able to negotiate. Bradbury doesn't want to negotiate a contract that's under market value again. Why would he? Why would you want him to? I'm for the player getting his money. Hey, I'm not for Daniel Jones getting his money. Or maybe I am. Maybe they should just give Daniel Jones the $35 million and let Saquon Barkley walk, because that would be the dumbest thing on the planet. But for me, I mean, why aren't you thinking like me here? Let's figure this out with Jay. By the way, that's the number one thing you got to figure out. There's 2 things you got to figure out here. Who your defensive coordinator is and paying Hurts. And who then after that you're going to designate to try to get back and bring back. Know this, your team's going to be a lesser team this coming season. It'll be a lesser, and by the way, that may be even with Jalen still on the last year of his rookie contract, because these Gardner Johnson, unless they franchise tag him, will not be an Eagle. He'll get $16 million. Bradbury's going to get $17 million. Shit, TJ Edwards may get $6.5. Howie's not paying that. Kaiser White might get $3 million. Fletcher Cox probably will be like a Dominican Sue, Buccaneer Dominican Sue. Somebody will come up and pay him $6 million to come in there and stop the run and play. I thought he played pretty good in the second half. Brian goes, we all know this? No, not all know this. No, not all know this. Look at Tony. Says that Kaiser is getting more than 3, and he laughed. Why, your boy Dean didn't do dick this year. As far as I'm concerned, he's got all the traits to be a bust. What do you see that I don't? Or what did you see that made you say he's going to be a player? What? Howie told you that? Yeah, that's because Howie's been great at drafting linebackers. Oh, yeah. I mean, he's been legendary at corners and linebackers and edge rushers. Legendary. He's actually stunk. I mean, yeah. Hey, so Kaiser White, man, you know, he was good, Sills, but Nakobe Dean's better. How do you know that? You do not know that. You do not know that. As far as I'm concerned, I'm leaning more towards my take in the fact that guy hasn't really showed me anything. Okay? That guy hasn't really showed me anything so far. And you're counting on Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean, who were underperforming last year. I thought Jordan was okay at the beginning. But again, there were a lot of bums on that roster. Or I should say on the schedule. A lot of bums you played. Terrible O-lines. You know? When you had to play. He got crushed in the Super Bowl. He was terrible in the Super Bowl. Okay? Well, your take had Jalen starting 2-4 last year. I also had a take that he would never throw for 4,000 yards and he would get hurt. So you're right. I missed one of them. You're right, Big Trag. You're right. But I also said he'd never throw for 4,000 yards. And why was that? Because he would get hurt. That's what happened. Okay? CJ Gardner-Johnson will get franchised. Yeah, because Howie does that a lot. You can't trade for a young, talented player knowing he wants a contract from the Saints and not sign him. This is Howie. He can do what he wants, right? Bob, he's got no leverage over Gardner-Johnson. He's a free agent. He's a UFA. He's an unrestricted free agent. Okay? He's not actually even, well, technically, March 15th, he's not an Eagle anymore. Okay? And by the way, don't get disappointed when I say that the 49ers have a better roster than you. Don't worry, that's February 21st. The Eagles didn't have a better roster than the 49ers last year on February 21st. But you built one in, you built through free agency and trades, you built a better roster. So it's not a big deal. It's February 21st. The 49ers have no questions like this, except, again, the most important, which is the quarterback. But again, they got to the NFC Championship game with Mr. Irrelevant. You're missing the point on that. Do you know what an absolute gold nugget that is for San Francisco? That they didn't have to pay a quarterback to get to the NFC Championship game? There's franchises around the National Football League that paid $45 million, and either the quarterback got hurt, got bounced in the opening round of the playoffs, or didn't even make the playoffs. And the Niners had a guy who's making less than $1 million get them one game less as far as Jalen Hurts. $900,000. Seals, you can't criticize us when Howie drafts your Christian Gonzalez, talking about the kid from Oregon. I like the kid from Oregon. Oregon produces good players. It's one of the few Pac-12 schools still left that produces. Penei Sewell, Kayvon Thibodeau, Justin Herbert. This kid Gonzalez is kind of that too. Dan, you will ignore that Dean was thrown in against the Titans and made tackles on every play. Tony, he wasn't very good this year. I don't care what you say. He wasn't very good. San Francisco still won't make it. Kyle Shanahan can't finish. Fair. Rich, that's fair. Kyle Shanahan, like Tone says, can't just put your name on the test and say, hey, I passed. Okay, he's Tone's dead on. Kyle Shanahan continually puts his name on the Super Bowl test and fails the test. That's a fair criticism. Brian goes, I hate the Pac-12. What's funny is the Pac-12 used to produce some of the greatest defensive linemen and O-linemen and running backs in the history of the NFL. Now, you got Lincoln Riley, who doesn't believe in defense, running USC. USC will never look the same because look at what that guy did to Oklahoma. Oklahoma used to be a program that produced some of the greatest defensive linemen in NFL history. I can't think of an Oklahoma Sooner that plays defense that I go like this. Now, look, Lane came out of there. You're going to see O-linemen. You're going to see offensive players, but you'll never see a defensive guy come out of that place any longer. You just don't. He'll destroy that place. Josh Huff. Who? Josh Huff. Who?